I've been spending the last several days here preaching a message, and that's what Internet evangelists do. Mostly about how important the infrastructure of the Internet is to me and to us at Google. Because the more of the people who can get access to the net, the better it is for everyone, including Google. Because we hope that those people who come onto the net will make use of our products and services. But more importantly, the more people that are on the net, the more valuable it becomes, simply because they have access to each other and they have the ability to share information. When you, if you saw what happened on the net when the World Wide Web was first released, it was a surprise for me to see how much people wanted to put their information on the net and share it with other people. And they didn't ask to be paid for that. What they got was satisfaction that someone else found their information useful. Now, this you should recognize as a very common academic value, because in the academic world we don't buy information from each other. We use it as our way of paying. So I give you information and you give me information. The result of this, I think, has been a kind of acceleration of academic work, because more information is there to help us move ahead. Certainly in science we know that's true. But I think we're also beginning to see this in other domains besides science and academia. Think for just a minute about what it means to have a population online, here for example in Argentina, able to get you information coming from the government. So if you have to fill out a form, you could do it online. If you need to learn that you have to fill out a form, you can find out about that online. The little chats that we just did made me think that if you needed help with some matter that's either local matter or federal matter, that the Hangout notion might be a way of getting literally some spoken help from someone. So the ability of the network to serve user needs is getting richer and richer in the way in which we interact. Probably 10 years ago, companies like FedEx and DHL and UPS and so on recognized an opportunity to serve users better by letting them find out where their packages were. You know, it was very cute. There was a little button you could click on, and it said in an informal way, it said, "Where's my stuff?" And when you click on it, it would say, "What number are you looking for?" And after you clicked on that, it would say, "We last saw your stuff at this location." They can't tell you where it is now, but they can tell you where they last saw it, and that's not too bad. So this idea of being able to help people find out things that they need to know right when they need them is a very powerful tool. The other thing which has happened in this 10-year period is that we're all carrying our information windows on our hips or in our purses with our mobiles. And that has created a revolution, I think, in people's ability to learn things exactly when they need them. It's getting very, very elaborate. I don't know if you've seen examples of someone holding up a mobile with its camera to a Korean language menu and having the mobile send the image of this Korean language menu to a computer somewhere on the internet, which does the optical character recognition, translates it into Spanish, sends the Spanish back, and then displays this on top of the Korean image. So you literally are doing what's called augmenting reality by having the lens of the camera augmented by computing power on the net. Oh, and it also looked at the prices that were in Korean, whatever the Korean currency was, and translated them into Argentinian pesos, for example. So the idea that you could hold up a camera and go like this and get people's names and figure out what the menu is saying, or holding it up at night and having it tell you which stars you're looking at. All of this it's feasible to do this. So you're harnessing the power of this small little device, not only to get images and sound, but to reach the internet, get large amounts of computation done, and get answers back. So I have this kind of interesting feeling about what the internet has done. Remember, my role in all this was building some pretty low-level infrastructure. People look at the World Wide Web and they look at the current applications and they say, how could you have possibly imagined that? And of course the answer is, well, I didn't exactly. I feel like the guy that built the road system. I figured out how to make highways, how to connect them together, and then how to make rules to tell people how you should use the highway. But they were pretty simple rules. I said, well, don't build the cars too long, or too wide, or too high, or don't make them way too much. Simple rules. Also, it would be good if you're going to go in this direction that you would stay on this side of the street, and if you're going to go in that direction, you should stay on that side of the street so you don't run into each other. Oh, maybe we better have some rules about what happens when you come to an intersection. The basic rules of the internet are to allow for a great deal of flexibility in the use of the roads. So as long as you follow these simple rules, you can build any vehicle you want. And people do. And you could put any buildings next to the roads that you want, and people do. So in the sort of figurative sense, the internet and its simple rules create a transportation system for information. And the vehicles that are carrying information and the places that you can go on the net are essentially as wide open as possible. Anyone who wants to build another building next to the internet road system is free to do that. So I'm speaking by analogy here, and I hope you don't misunderstand that. But what that tells us is that you don't have to invent everything in order to have a big influence. If you just get the infrastructure built and in place and supported, and you invite people to invent new ways to use it, and then you step back and watch, it's absolutely amazing. So every day when I get up and I look in the paper, I wonder, what new way has someone found to use the internet and the World Wide Web? And I'm very rarely disappointed. There's hundreds of millions of people, 2 billion people on the network now, and many of them are fully capable of inventing new ideas and trying them out. One other small analogy, and then I'd like to get your questions. I don't know if you've ever looked at an anthill. You know ants in a little anthill? So I think there's an anthill theory of internet development. So if you picked 3 ants to look at, and they're crawling around, you followed each ant for a day, they probably wouldn't do anything very interesting. They wander around looking for something, and if they find anything, they come back to the anthill. So if you only followed 3 ants, it would probably be boring. But what if you could follow 1,000,000 ants? Well, I bet with 1,000,000 ants, a bunch of them would find something interesting that they bring back to the anthill. I think of the internet as full of these creative little ants crawling around. There's millions of experiments that happen every day on the net, and most of them aren't very interesting and we never hear about them. But there's so many of them going on that every day somebody discovers something interesting, which is why it's so much fun to get up in the morning and say, what else did they figure out what to do with the net? So here we are in Argentina, in a place where you have about 67% penetration in the population of internet, which means that we should have an interesting opportunity to see some new ideas coming out of internet applications, just because there are so many people that are capable of getting access to it. I think there's still work to be done to get infrastructure in place. And I met today with the Ministry of Planning, which has a big project to put fiber optic networking throughout the country. It's a very powerful plan, and I think it's very well thought out. Of course, we still have to execute, but the idea that they're doing the same thing. They are building basic infrastructure, and the part which is the most important about the plan, in my view, is that that infrastructure is intended to be available on a wholesale basis. That's really important because it's inviting the retail community to invent ways of taking advantage of that underlying wholesale investment. So that's...
Sorry, but
yeah, no,
my English isn't so well, so I
Would you
would like
like
to
to-
understand especially what have you say about this plan that is Argentina Conectada. That is the plan.
Yes, conectada, sí.
Yes, so you have said that it was a powerful plan, and what more, because I want to have the
Sí.
correct words.
Say, and we can make translation
Yes,
if you
if
like.
you need.
You want, so it's powerful because it covers a great deal of the country. It provides potentially very high speed, and it's being offered on a wholesale basis. Is there a good term for that?
Wholesale basis. How do
Wholesale.
you translate that?
Son fotos de mayorista, o sea que no es retail, o sea, no están
Al por mayor.
Exacto, que
La
son por
competencia
mayor,
entre mayoristas.
exactamente.
What were you doing down there on the floor?
Porque está embarazada, por eso le pregunté.
I mean, these people just sort of... Hello.
It was a surprise.
Well, anyway, thank you for your help. We may call on you some more. So it makes sense, the wholesale. So the reason that's important is that if I want to supply a retail service to customers, I can get at a discounted rate, a reduced price, at wholesale, access to this broadband network, and then add value to it and sell that to the end customer. So what the government is doing here is enabling business to build on top of that basic infrastructure in the same way that the internet creates this platform, and you get to build on top of that. What you'll find in the internet environment is layers, some of the basic physical transport, and then the packet switching layer, and then the applications that sit on top of that. And so these layers create opportunities for creativity, invention, competition. So that's why this looks like a very, very powerful plan. There are other parts of the world that adopted a similar idea. In Australia, there's the National Broadband Network, which is bringing fiber to every home and every office in Australia, possibly with some small exceptions where radio is used instead of optical fiber. But it's a big investment by the government in infrastructure in the same way that they might invest in roads and airports and other transportation infrastructure. This same thing is also happening in New Zealand. And it's the same philosophy, is anyone should have equal access to the underlying infrastructure at a reasonable price and can then build applications and services on top of that. So their idea is to use the term like priming a pump.